The secret Sussex reunion behind closed doors.
We know that Meghan was meant to be here.
1 hour. That is how long Meghan Markle spent inside King Charles's private country estate on the 10th of July. The first time in more than 4 years the king had seen his own grandchildren. Then the gates opened, the cars pulled away, and the palace released nothing. No photograph, no statement, no explanation. Weeks of planning, over in about an hour, with not a single frame to prove any of it happened. And 2 weeks on it is still making headlines across Britain because of something that surfaced in the days afterwards that nobody involved was supposed to say. The hour. Start with what is confirmed, because a great deal of what has been published about that afternoon is not. On Friday the 10th of July, King Charles and Queen Camilla hosted the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, together with Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, at Highgrove House, the King's private country estate in Gloucestershire, west of London. Buckingham Palace confirmed it. That much is not in dispute. It was the first time the King had seen his grandchildren in more than 4 years. The last occasion was June 2022, during the late Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee. Archie is now 7. Lilibet is 5, which means that for her, 4 years is close to the whole of her remembered life. She is named after her great-grandmother, and until that Friday, she had barely met the man who inherited that great-grandmother's crown. The meeting is understood to have lasted around an hour. British royals expert Hilary Fordwich told Fox News Digital it ran just over that, with Camilla at the King's side throughout. Sources speaking to Vanity Fair put it at approximately an hour. The visit was designated private. No public appearances, no announced schedule, no press. The palace did not brief journalists in advance and did not stage anything afterwards. It issued a short confirmation once the meeting was already over. That is an unusual way for the palace to handle a moment of this weight. The royal communications operation exists to manage narrative. Engagements are trailed in advance, images are distributed to the agencies, and the framing is settled before the public sees anything at all. Here, the sequence ran backwards. The event happened, and then the world was told, in the fewest words the institution could manage. And before anyone arrived, both sides had agreed to something specific. No photographs and no briefings. Remember that second condition. It becomes the whole story. The road in. The route to that hour was chaotic enough that, until the final days, most of the British press did not believe it would happen at all. Harry had flown in for a week of engagements built around the Invictus Games. He visited Birmingham Children's Hospital on the 9th of July. The following day he appeared at the Invictus 1 Year to Go event in Birmingham, marking the countdown to the 2027 competition. That was the stated purpose of the trip, and for most of it, Harry was alone. Hanging over everything was the security dispute. Taxpayer-funded protection for the Sussexes in Britain was withdrawn after they stepped back from royal duties in 2020, and Harry has been fighting through the courts to have it restored ever since. The position from the Sussex side has been consistent. Returning to the United Kingdom as a family is close to impossible without it. On that basis, the working assumption in Fleet Street was that Meghan would stay away, and the children certainly would. Then, at the very end of Harry's itinerary, the plan changed. Meghan and the children flew in from Portugal, where the family had been on holiday, went almost directly to Gloucestershire, and left again. Until that point, the story had been a fortnight of speculation running in both directions. Reports said she was coming. Reports said she was not. The security question was named as the obstacle in nearly every version, and nobody on either side of the Atlantic confirmed a thing until the family was already on British soil. Critics seized on the sequence immediately, and their argument is the sharpest one made against the Sussexes this month. If the family can enter the country, travel to a private estate, spend the afternoon there, and depart without incident and without state protection, what remains of the claim that they cannot come home without it? The answer from the other direction is that a single unannounced visit behind the walls of a secluded royal estate is a different security problem entirely from public engagements with published times and locations. 1 hour at Highgrove is not a rope line in central London. Running alongside all of this was the accommodation row. Harry's spokesperson said an offer for the Duke to stay at Buckingham Palace during the London leg had been withdrawn after he formally accepted it. Palace sources rejected that account outright. saying Harry had missed the deadline to reply and that by the time his acceptance arrived, the arrangements could no longer be made. Two irreconcilable versions of the same offer, briefed to the press by two halves of the same family before anyone had sat down together. That is the atmosphere this meeting walked into. And if that kind of detail is what you come here for, subscribe now, because the briefing war did not stop when the gates closed. What happened to it afterwards is the part almost nobody predicted. The photograph that never existed. In the modern monarchy, the image is the message. A single frame released through the palace press office with a one-line caption. That is how the institution tells the world what to think about a relationship without ever having to say anything at all. It is the most efficient communication tool the royal family possesses, and it has been used to signal favor, forgiveness, and exile for more than a century. At Highgrove, it was not used. Nothing was released. The palace confirmed the meeting after the fact and then closed the door. There are two forces at work in that decision, and both of them are real. The first is institutional. Any photograph of the King and the Duchess of Sussex together would have been read worldwide as endorsement, reconciliation, official, stamped, and approved. It would have run on every front page and every feed on Earth, and it would have restored to the Sussexes the one asset they have been without since 2020, visible proximity to the crown. Withholding the image withholds that. The King saw his grandchildren. The institution conceded nothing. It is worth being precise about what that asset is worth. Since 2020, the Sussexes have built their commercial life on their own names, and those names carry the weight they carry because of an association the family has spent 6 years declining to renew in public. One frame would have renewed it, at no cost to them, and with no control afterwards over how it was used. The second is protective, and a source speaking to People magazine made the case plainly. Keeping these meetings out of public view is precisely what gives them room to work. The argument is that this family's relationships have been damaged partly because every interaction becomes public property within hours. Let them rebuild without an audience. The second reading is more persuasive than it first appears. A photograph would have converted a private afternoon into a public product instantly and permanently, and the moment it became a product, it would have become an argument about what it meant. But the no photograph agreement was only half a bargain, and the other half did not survive the week. The leak. Within days, details of the meeting appeared in Vanity Fair, attributed to insiders. The visit had lasted about an hour. It had been, in the phrase that traveled around the world, completely cloak and dagger, orchestrated by the King himself. It was being kept top secret. Nobody had told anybody. Read that sequence again. The people who briefed a journalist about how secret the meeting was were, in the act of briefing, ending its secrecy. The reporting indicated those sources were connected to the Sussexes, and the accusations of leaking followed within hours. Alongside them came reports that Harry had personally assured his father he would not discuss the meeting publicly. Sources close to does an enormous amount of unverified work in royal journalism. It can mean a spokesperson, a former employee with a grievance, or a friend of a friend. Nobody has produced evidence that Harry or Meghan personally authorized anything, and neither has commented. What matters is the timing. The agreement not to brief was not incidental to this meeting. By every account, it was a precondition of it, the mechanism that made an hour at Highgrove possible at all, and the thing the arrangement was reportedly built around from the start. But the damage does not depend on proof. The single most persistent criticism of Harry from inside the royal machine, the one that has shaped how he is handled since 2020, is that private conversations do not stay private. Whether or not it was fair in this instance, this episode confirmed that narrative for everyone already inclined to believe it, and did so within a week of a meeting that had been arranged specifically to prove the opposite. Nothing the palace could have released would have damaged them as efficiently as that one magazine story did. The pattern that has defined 6 years of this story repeated itself in miniature. An attempt at privacy, followed by publication, followed by mutual accusation. And it explains why this visit is still being written about. The meeting lasted an hour. The argument about the meeting has lasted a fortnight. There is a second reason the story would not settle, and it has nothing to do with who spoke to whom. It is about who was not in the room. The empty chairs. 3 details from the guest list carry more weight than anything reported about the conversation itself. The first is that Queen Camilla was there for all of it. Royal biographer Angela Levin, citing her own sources, has claimed the king insisted on it, and framed Camilla as protective about how people speak to Charles, with a particular watchfulness where Harry is concerned. Set aside the characterization, and the underlying fact still stands on its own. Harry wrote about Camilla in Spare, at length, in terms that were not affectionate. She sat in that room for an hour. Nobody present had forgotten a word of it. The second is that Prince William was not there. Neither was the Princess of Wales. That was not an oversight. You do not accidentally forget to invite the heir to the throne to a family gathering at your own house. The rift between the brothers remains the coldest and least yielding part of this entire story. Harry's account in Spare of a physical confrontation with William, and of what William is alleged to have said about Meghan, is not repaired by an afternoon in Gloucestershire. Charles reconciling with Harry and William reconciling with Harry are two separate projects, and only one of them has shown any movement whatsoever. The third is that Meghan made no public appearance during the entire trip. She had reportedly been scheduled at one stage to join Harry at the Invictus Countdown event. She did not attend that or anything else. The children were never expected to. The family was also believed to be staying not at any royal residence, but at Althorpe House, Princess Diana's childhood home, and the place where she is buried. That is not a neutral address. Choosing Diana's family estate over any property connected to the crown places the visit inside one lineage and pointedly outside the other, and it did not go unremarked. Every one of those choices was deliberate, which raises the question that has divided royal commentators since the 10th of July. Did the Sussexes leave Highgrove having won something, or having been told no? Two stories. Two accounts of that hour are in open circulation, and both are being reported with equal confidence by people who were not present. The first says it went badly. Talk TV host Kevin O'Sullivan, citing sources, described the affair as a mess. Angela Levin supported that reading, saying the Sussexes came away with none of what they had asked for, and that the conversation would not have been warm. Reports referred to an alleged list of requests that produced nothing, and to a couple who left the estate frustrated. The second says it went well. Sources quoted just as widely reported that Harry emerged buoyed and energized, that he is hoping for further meetings with his father, and that he remains determined to keep pursuing the security case through the courts. Both cannot be fully true, and the shape of the disagreement is more revealing than either version. Two camps, each with access to sympathetic journalists, each advancing an account that serves its own position. One narrative has the Sussexes humiliated and empty-handed. The other has a door quietly opening. What neither camp has produced is a single named witness. Everything reported about the temperature inside that room comes from people describing a conversation they did not hear. Not a single one of them has attached a name to it. There is one claim, however, that collapses on contact. Descriptions have circulated of Meghan's expression as she left Highgrove, that she looked disappointed, that her body language gave her away. There were no photographers, there is no footage, nobody saw her leave. That detail was invented, and then it traveled, and it is now repeated as established fact. It is worth remembering every time someone describes with confidence what a face was doing behind a closed gate, which leaves one piece of evidence that does not come from an anonymous source, cannot be spun by either camp, and has a date attached to it. September. Harry is reportedly being offered a room at Buckingham Palace for a return visit in September. The same accommodation whose collapse in July generated the row between his spokesperson and palace sources. That is the most concrete signal in the entire story. Briefings are cheap, an invitation is not. If a family had genuinely been humiliated and turned away at Highgrove, the natural next step is nothing. Instead, there is a date, a residence, and a standing offer. It also arrives with a history behind it. This is not the first attempt. In September 2025, Harry and Charles had tea at Clarence House, their first meeting in 19 months, and the coverage at the time suggested a thaw was beginning. Speaking to the BBC the previous year, Harry said he would welcome reconciliation, and that there was no purpose in continuing to fight. Highgrove was the next increment. September would be the one after that. What it will not include is any obvious progress with William, and that ceiling shapes everything else. The 2027 Invictus Games are now firmly in view. Harry has given years of his life to that competition. And in an unfractured family, a senior royal at the opening ceremony would be close to standard protocol. Whether the institution is willing to attach itself publicly to anything involving Harry, when every appearance produces exactly the fortnight of coverage you are watching now, is the open question, and the answer is likely to be cautious, late and minimal. There is also the matter of what Harry does next in court. He has given no indication of abandoning the security case, and that litigation guarantees continued friction with the government and, by extension, with the institution his father heads. Reconciliation and legal action running in parallel is a difficult combination to sustain for long. So, the meeting that mattered may not be the one that has already happened. What the silence said. Return to the question in the title, because everything above answers it. This visit is making headlines because a photograph that was never taken has generated more coverage than any photograph would have. Because a family that agreed to keep something private could not keep it private for a week. Because the first crack of light in 4 years was met by an institution drawing the curtains, and the meaning of that gesture is still being argued over. Underneath all of it sits the question no amount of tea in Gloucestershire can settle. What would reconciliation actually look like? The two sides appear to want different things. One version is private. Phone calls, visits, grandchildren who know their grandfather. Nothing announced and nothing published. The other is public. Visible reintegration, acknowledged standing, the association restored. Highgrove delivered a great deal of the first and none of the second. Whether that reads as failure or as beginning depends entirely on which version the Sussexes came for, and nobody outside that family knows the answer. That gap is not a misunderstanding. It is the disagreement itself, and it has never once been publicly resolved. Strip away the briefing wars, the litigation, the rival accounts, and the invented details, and one thing did happen on the 10th of July. A 77-year-old man undergoing cancer treatment spent one unrecorded hour with 2 grandchildren he had not seen in 4 years. So, here is the question worth arguing about. Was the palace right to withhold a photograph, protecting a fragile family moment from becoming public property? Or was it a calculated decision to make certain the Sussexes left with nothing to show for the journey? Tell me in the comments, and keep it civil down there, because this one brings out strong feelings on both sides, and I read every reply. If this was useful, hit like, share it with someone following the story, and subscribe, because September is coming, and that visit is the one that will actually tell us where this is heading. Thanks for watching.